So I think Trump is America's first truly postmodern president, which might surprise those who associate postmodernism with woke, Marxist, commie, trans super soldiers who want to teach white children that they caused slavery or something like that. But Trump and the modern conservative movement in general exemplify the very type of postmodernism that they're trying to get other people to be so afraid of. And by understanding this, we can then explain moments like this, where the health secretary, RFK, reacts to a very weird and uncommon measles outbreak with, "No, it's normal, this happens all the time." But let's start by establishing what postmodernism actually is. Now, Jean-Francois Lyotard described postmodernism as incredulity towards meta-narratives. And all this means is a disbelief or skepticism towards systems that attempt to explain it all, whether those systems be religious or scientific or Clarissa. Now, Fredric Jameson described postmodernism as the cultural logic of late capitalism, which means that postmodernism isn't like some original philosophical school of thought. It's just a word to describe a social and economic system that exists under capitalism. And Jameson saw postmodernism as especially American. He wrote that American postmodern culture is the internal and superstructural expression of a whole new wave of American military and economic domination throughout the world. And this sort of postmodernism creates a nostalgia for a past without connection to a clear sense of history. This nostalgia enables the longing for a time when America was great and the founding fathers were the smartest boys in the room and all this stuff without reckoning with actual history. You basically have to do a choose your own adventure when you're talking about the past. Now, Jameson explains this in the context of postmodern architecture. He writes, "The postmodern architecture, which randomly and without principle but with gusto cannibalizes all the architectural styles of the past and combines them in overstimulating ensembles." And we see this in right-wing postmodern politics, right? They're just picking and choosing different aspects of the past without a real connection to their specific history to make these, weird overstimulating ensembles. And the postmodern architecture thing also explains something about Trump, but I'll get to that in a second. Another element of postmodern critique, and we get this in people like Michel Foucault, is this idea that it's not scientific consensus or political values or reason that shape history, it's just power. Power is the dominating and driving force of politics, culture, economics, everything basically. So now I want to talk about how American conservatives went postmodern. And the first thing we can see is their use of the media. Because rather than connecting to a past with a clear historical trajectory, they basically use the media to create a constant present, where all that matters is what's happening right now, and there's never not a thing happening in this given moment. And it creates a sense of spectacle where we're always pulled into consuming the narrative that's being created. And we see this whether it's the 24-hour news cycle on cable television or social media. One example of this recently is that after Elon Musk did a Nazi salute, because he did a Nazi salute because he's a Nazi, he used his website X to create a false panic about how AOC actually did a Nazi salute, right? So it's an instance of taking a thing that really happened, him doing the Nazi salute, and then saying a thing that didn't happen, did happen to create a new spectacle or narrative. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it sucks. Now, another way that the right has used postmodernism is in their raw seeking out and wielding of power. Now, because these people don't believe in truth or history or scientific consensus, they know that all they've needed to do all along is use power to construct and create their project. We see this in the ongoing barrage of executive orders, which are basically creating new histories and truths out of thin air just because. And I was reading a bit about others who have talked about conservatism being postmodern. And I saw this in the Princeton conservative student newspaper. And someone writes that during the COVID-19 pandemic, the right used postmodern critiques of scientific consensus and the healthcare apparatus, arguments that could have been lifted from Foucault. So we see examples there. Another thing we see in conservative postmodernism is a focus on identity. Now, while right-wing critics of postmodernism will basically say it's all left and liberal identity politics, Trump and co. are the ones who are really all about the politics of identity. As I've been putting this together today, a new executive order dropped that says that English is the official language of America. And this overall project is really about making the white Christian American identity the identity that matters, the identity that gets to both create truth and then benefit from the truth that have been created. And there's so much other racist, white supremacist stuff happening right now, but that would be a whole other video. Now, that would be a whole other 100 videos. Now, that'd be a whole other 1,000 videos. And what this all does is create this pure present with no connection to history, no connection to existing ideology, in which they can kind of do or say whatever they want. And when you're disconnected from the past and history, it makes it really hard to use history to critique that present. Now, Jameson has written about this, and he calls American postmodernism a new and original historical situation in which we are condemned to seek history by way of our own pop images and simulacra of that history, which itself remains forever out of reach. And I think it should be obvious that Donald Trump is the perfect postmodern president. And I think that's mostly because Trump is a real estate guy and a reality TV guy. If we're looking at the economics and culture of postmodernism in America, these are two of the places where it happens. And as a real estate investor, he built his empire on the sort of gaudy postmodern casinos that someone like Jameson writes about, and later just participated in the empty act of selling his name to go on buildings that he didn't construct. That sort of real estate and real estate in general is a sort of shell game that's, constructed value with little reference to reality. Also, people that make millions and billions from real estate are really the worst. And as a reality TV personality, Trump learned that truth and history don't matter. Media narratives and spectacle do. That's the stuff that matters, and that's why he's so good at this. And while I won't get into all of this today, I do think that this sort of postmodern conservatism is really dangerous, and it's doing something very bad to us. And the big irony here is that it's basically the same thing that these guys are blaming on leftist professors and activists is the same system that they're using to both build and wield power. They're pulling we got to find the guys who did this while they're the guys who are doing it. Okay, so what is this all doing to us? Well, according to Fredric Jameson, this lack of linear time and history makes it impossible for us to feel like we can do anything or change anything or respond to what's happening. And because this present becomes all that there is, we have this pure intensity of the present. And Jameson associates this intensity with anxiety and the loss of reality. And for those who like it, who are a part of the project, it can feel like euphoria, the high, the intoxicated, or hallucinogenic intensity. So basically, for those of us who don't love what's happening politically, we have anxiety and we feel like we're disconnected from reality. For those who dig it, they feel like they put Molly up their butts. And Jameson thinks this postmodern tendency makes it especially hard to resist or react. Because we can't think of a new future if we can't analyze and use the past. This leads to an apocalyptic sense where we can imagine things collapsing more than we can imagine them changing. Jameson's the guy who basically said it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. And that's what he's getting at here. He thinks postmodernism creates that set of conditions. Now, while I don't have a solution to this, I'll at least paraphrase Fredric Jameson here and say that we can at least name the systems that exist and insist on injecting history into our analysis of what's happening. We can note that this political project is not connected to conservative history or the founding fathers or Christianity or anything like that. It's just a postmodern game of seeking and wielding power. And I want to talk about this more in future videos, but I do think that there's a value in analyzing the situation and naming the situation and being very public about that. I'm speaking of future videos. Thank you so much for the support of everyone who signed up for my Patreon. You're helping me make stuff. If this video looks better, it's because I bought a new camera because I am using the money I make on Patreon to reinvest in my production. So thank you for that. There's a link in the description. I do want to know the stuff you guys want to see me talk about, so please do let me know. In the meantime, this is all really overwhelming, right? The stuff Jameson says about that feeling of anxiety and the loss of reality can be a lot. So, read some stuff, listen to some stuff, watch some stuff, find solace in your community. It's tough, but, we got each other, and that's something. That's something, right? That counts for something. I think that's something. That's a little bit. That's a little bit. That's something. Okay, I'll catch you guys soon. Thank you so much.